Modern AAA gaming has developed a habit of making you wait. We wait for the cinematic walk and talks. We wait for a 20-minute intro about Kratos' feelings. But in 2007, Santa Monica Studio didn't want you to wait. They wanted to slap you in the face right from the get-go. God of War II opens with Kratos falling from a mountain and immediately fighting a bronze statue the size of a skyscraper. The Colossus of Rhodes isn't just an epic boss fight, it's a statement, and it's arguably the greatest opening in gaming history. It was the PS2 screaming at the top of its lungs that it wasn't done yet. You weren't just watching a cinematic, you were fighting across the city docks, soaring through the air, and eventually tearing the beast apart from the inside. While the Norse Saga is a triumph of cinematic drama, God of War II is the pinnacle of interactive spectacle. Today, we're breaking down why, despite the graphical leaps of the reboots, the 2007 masterpiece remains the absolute peak of the franchise. It's about pacing, it's about adrenaline, and it's about a game that respected your time by never wasting a single second of it. Let's address the elephant, or rather the yak, in the room. In God of War Ragnarok, the pacing of an epic, world-ending conflict comes to a grinding, agonizing halt for the Ironwood segment. For nearly 2 hours, the God of War is replaced by a teenage boy picking berries, riding a slow-moving beast, and engaging in a slow-burn romance. While it's technically well written for a prestige drama, as a sequel to a high-octane action franchise, it sacrifices every ounce of narrative momentum. It's a detour that asks the player to be patient while the stakes of the world sit on a shelf. Now, contrast that with the downtime in God of War II. In 2007, Santa Monica Studio understood that a God of War should never be a passenger. When the game needs to move you from point A to point B, it doesn't put you in a boat for a 10-minute walk and talk while Atreus asks 50 questions about the nature of godhood. It throws you onto the back of a Pegasus. It forces you into a high-speed aerial dogfight, dodging energy blasts and snapping the necks of griffins while diving through a literal cyclone. This is the adrenaline rush philosophy of game design. In the Greek era, lore wasn't delivered through campfire stories or long walks in the woods. It was delivered through mechanical momentum. You didn't just hear about the Sisters of Fate, you learned about their power by physically dismantling the massive ticking clockwork of their temple. There is a relentless sense of urgency here that the modern games have replaced with the movie-style pacing that often feels overindulgent. One game feels like a desperate, bloody race against time to change your destiny. The other, at its worst points, feels like a long, scenic hike where the destination is secondary to the dialogue. The Norse games are undeniable visual triumphs, but from a design perspective, they are geographically flat. Because of the over-the-shoulder camera and the commitment to a grounded, realistic tone, the world is essentially built as a series of horizontal paths. You walk, you boat, and you occasionally engage in a scripted, press circle to climb wall animation. God of War II rejects this restrictive linearity for a sense of extreme verticality. The level design in 2007 wasn't just a background for the story, it was a 3D obstacle course that demanded your constant engagement. Think about the steeds of time. You aren't just traversing a level, you are scaling mountain-sized machines, swinging across massive, lethal gaps with the blades of chaos. The platforming wasn't a contextual prompt or a break between fights, it was a core pillar of the gameplay that required the same aggression as the combat. You had to time your double jumps, manage your glide distance, and use the golden fleece to parry projectiles while balancing on narrow, crumbling beams. Whether it's the dizzying heights of the Temple of Lachesis or the claustrophobic, sinking traps of the Bog of the Forgotten, the environment in God of War II is always active. It's a world that feels alive and dangerous. In the Norse games, the puzzles can often feel like busy work designed to slow you down so characters can finish their dialogue. In God of War II, the platforming and level design are the source of the adrenaline. You feel the true scale of the mythology because the game constantly forces you to look up and then gives you the tools to climb that impossible distance yourself. It's an interconnected, vertical playground that makes the modern, hidden loading screen crevices and narrow corridors feel incredibly restrictive by comparison. There's a version of the argument that says the 2018 reboot gave us a more complex Kratos, a father, a man trying to be better. And that's true, and it's powerful storytelling. But complexity and rawness are not the same thing. God of War II gives us Kratos at his most unfiltered. Every scar, every trauma, every act of divine cruelty that was done to him has calcified into something singular, an absolute, immovable will. He is not trying to heal. He is not seeking redemption. He wants Zeus dead, and he will burn the world to get there. And the game never flinches from that. What makes this analytically interesting is that the game doesn't frame his rage as a character flaw to be overcome. It frames it as mythologically justified. The gods of Olympus are not sympathetic. They are vain, manipulative, and casually brutal. Kratos' war against them isn't just personal, it's a reckoning, and the game earns that framing at every turn. This is a version of Kratos that the franchise never fully revisited. God of War II caught him at a precise inflection point, wounded enough to feel human, enraged enough to feel mythic. People say the Norse Saga gave Kratos a redemption arc, but I'd argue God of War II gave him something more compelling, a defiance arc. When Zeus kills him, the story doesn't become a slow burn mystery, it becomes a middle finger to the concept of destiny. Kratos literally crawls out of hell, finds the people who write the laws of the universe, and kills them because they got in his way. This isn't a father seeking forgiveness, it's a man refusing to accept his fate. And that defiance is reflected in the most creative boss roster in the series. Contrast this with the Norse Saga. In 2018, we fought the same troll with a different colored rock 5 times. In Ragnarok, we got great duels, but they were mostly man-to-man brawls in flat arenas. God of War II gives us mythological insanity. You fight the barbarian king, who grows to the size of a building. You fight Theseus, dodging ice shards while he taunts you from the rafters. You fight the Kraken, where the boss fight is a puzzle. You have to use a soldier's corpse to jam a pressure plate just to reach its face. But the crown jewel? The Sisters of Fate. This isn't just one of the best bosses in the franchise, it's one of the greatest in gaming history because it is a 3-phase masterclass in scale, variety, and narrative integration. In the first phase, you're battling Lachesis in a massive vertical arena, dodging energy beams and using your grappling hooks to stay airborne. But just as you settle into a rhythm, the game throws a mechanical curveball. Atropos pulls you into a temporal rift, dragging you back into the past, forcing you to fight on the very sword from the final boss battle of the first game. You aren't just fighting a boss, you are literally defending your past self's timeline while the goddess tries to shatter the blade that killed Ares. It's a lore-heavy mind trip that modern games are simply too grounded to attempt. The final phase forces you to juggle both sisters while managing the mirrors of time, creating a frantic, high-stakes puzzle where the boss fight is the level design. This is the ultimate expression of Kratos breaking the game's own rules to win. It's not a scripted movie moment where you watch a cool cutscene of time travel. It's an active, mechanical struggle where you have to outsmart the architects of destiny. It captures a level of creative ambition that makes the more realistic duels of the modern era feel safe and predictable by comparison. And then, there is the ending. Modern games often wrap things up in a neat bow or tease a sequel with a quiet conversation. God of War II didn't tease a sequel, it demanded one. Kratos standing on the back of Gaia, his blades drawn, as the Titans scale Mount Olympus to wage war on the gods. It is the most hype moment in the history of the medium. It turned a personal vendetta into a world-ending revolution. When those words, "the end begins," hit the screen, it was a promise that the scale was only going to get bigger. I want to be clear, the 2018 reboot and Ragnarok are genuinely great 10-on-10 games. The father-son dynamic between Kratos and Atreus is some of the best character writing in the medium. That's not up for debate. God of War II is not the most emotionally nuanced game in the franchise. It is not the most technically sophisticated. It will not make you cry the way Ragnarok might. But here's the analytical distinction I keep coming back to. The Norse Saga succeeded by departing from what God of War was. New camera, new tone, new thematic territory. It is, in many ways, a different franchise wearing a familiar name, and it wore it well. God of War II succeeded by being the fullest possible expression of what the original franchise was. It didn't need to reinvent anything, it just needed to be completely, uncompromisingly itself, and it was. When a creative vision is executed that completely, that confidently, at that scale, it doesn't age. It doesn't get superseded. It becomes a reference point. And that is exactly what God of War II is, nearly 2 decades on. The Norse Saga has the heart, but for me, God of War II will always have the crown. It's a 12-hour explosion of creativity with no breaks, no filler, and no apologies. The beard is great, Atreus and Mimir are great companions, but the Kratos of 2007, he's the one who taught us that even fate can be broken if you're angry enough. And that for me will always be the peak of God of War.